Okay, I think we are live, but it's not going on LinkedIn for some reason. I got the message
It's
here.
uploading.
Yeah, so let me see. I think if it is not, then I'll drop the YouTube live link on the YouTube the LinkedIn event page for the folks to join. Either way, as long as they have the link to join, I think this should be good. So let me first make sure that I do that.
It's not live yet. I'm going to quickly go off screen and grab some water.
I think we are live on the YouTube already.
Oh, no. Okay.
Let me get the link so I can drop it in the LinkedIn event page. All right. Thank you, folks, for the ones who came to the LinkedIn Live page. And we were talking here, but it didn't go live. Sorry about that. It happens most of the times. We are in tech field, and without technical glitch, there is no live or demo sessions, right? All right. Welcome, everyone, to my monthly career talk. This time, I'm more focused and excited to bring this amazing panel. I will not be talking to any data science leaders or anyone who are in the leadership roles or in the data and ML industry that most of the talks I've been doing so far. I'm here to talk with some of the amazing folks from the recruitment side who are the first point of contact, when our application goes into the uh, hiring process. Before I begin, I have a huge respect for these recruiters. Someone call them recruiters, someone call them talent sources, talent mining. This goes by multiple profession, but ultimately the main idea is the theme of their profession. I have a huge respect. Everyone I worked so far, whether the role eventually worked out or not for me, uh, you know, I've been lucky enough to work with great recruiters so far. A lot of hard work goes there, and let's start with round of applause to them, right? So that's very hard work. And thank you so much for coming in today. Let's start with introduction without wasting much time. I'll start with Kim.
Sure. Thanks, Ramal. Thanks so much for having us. Really excited to be here. I'm Kim. I've been in the talent space for over 10 years. I currently lead talent attraction at Zapier, where I've been for about 3 years, and I live in Bellingham, Washington. I'll hand it over to Nitin.
Thank you, Kim. Hi, everyone. My name is Nitin. I'm based in London, UK. I've also worked in recruiting and the tech sector for over 10 years. I've had the fortune of building companies in Europe and the US, and have also been a candidate, a recruiter, a hiring manager. So I have a few perspectives to share, just like the rest of the panel today. And I currently work at a company called Automatic, who are the company behind WordPress, Tumblr, Woo, a few other brands, and I head up talent operations, which looks after talent enablement. So very happy to be here. I'll pass it over to Kritika.
Thank you, Nitin. I am Kritika Menon. I am a senior talent acquisition partner working with CGI. I live in Toronto, Canada. I come in with 15 plus years of experience within human resources and a lot of experience within talent acquisition. And when I'm not working, I am creating content on LinkedIn, my YouTube channel, Cree Talks. So pretty much working towards trying to help candidates from a recruiter's perspective all the time. And I'll pass it on to Andrew.
Thank you. Thank you. My name is Andrew Lewis. I am the head of talent acquisition for a sustainability technology company called Worldly. I have been in the recruitment space for coming up on 10 years and really have taken a unique journey between both agency and in-house recruitment. Really passionate about supporting job seekers, enabling job seekers, and providing kind of unique perspectives, as some of my panelists shared. I also am the founder of the Talent Operator newsletter, which is a tactical newsletter for recruitment professionals. And so happy to be here and excited to jump into the conversation.
Awesome. Thank you so much, guys. Yeah, and let's begin to our fun conversation. I have some question prepared for you guys. Uh, I will cover three categories. One is going to be general recruitment process, around that. The other one is what is the new top technical things that, like the applicants can do, implement the train in AI for their benefit, stuff like that. And then we'll kind of close with some practical tips we can share with the job seekers, right? So without wasting much time, I'll begin with my first question. And then this is regarding uh, some of the insights into the recruitment process itself. How do we do like maybe the smart job search strategies, uh, explaining about current recruitment process at a high level. I think I'll probably direct this question to Andrew. There's a lot of talk around the ATS, like, hey, where does the application go? I get kicked out right away, or does it even touch the human interface? So what do you think about, AI automation on this current interview process? And, like, yeah, overall the process of current recruitment workflow, I guess, just to give a high level.
Sure. Yeah, high level. I mean, I think historically there's been a lot of misconception about what the applicant tracking system is and what it does. I think it's often the boogeyman, especially in markets like this when candidates aren't hearing back. I understand the frustration. You want to know like what is this puzzle that needs to be solved. The reality is most applicant tracking systems are really just databases where candidate information is collected and stored. It's where jobs are posted, jobs are distributed, jobs are filled and closed. So it's really just kind of this data collection center. We're now moving into an era with a lot of the kind of new players on the market where a lot of these platforms are much more dynamic and can do a lot more. But historically, they're really kind of just a digital filing cabinet, right, where this data comes in, and then the recruitment team is tasked with sorting through it. And so, I think the important things to know as a job seeker is, when you apply to whether it's through LinkedIn or Indeed, or maybe it's directly through the career site, your resume is being filtered into an applicant tracking system. Without a better way to say this, you're essentially kind of lumped into a pile of resumes that are coming in that can then be, sorted, reviewed, and evaluated. And, that's when the recruitment team will reach out to contact you about next steps. I think we're seeing a rise of AI being used in the job search. I think we're still too early to tell on maybe the full benefits or drawbacks of it. I think one of the things that it is doing is increasing the amount of applications that are coming in, because there's a lot of auto application technologies that are being used, and so it's creating a lot of noise in the space. And so I would caution you, if you are thinking about using these platforms or using this technology, really the best chance you have to hear back from recruiters is to be laser focused and highly targeted in your job search. And so I always recommend, making sure that you're aligned at least 75% to the job requisition that you're applying to, if you want to have any kind of, feedback from the recruitment team or any real chance at having a conversation. I would love to hear from my other fellow panelists on this, but I would say that at a high level, that's what we're looking at with the recruitment process.
Oh, that's awesome. You covered it well. I think I really like how you said 75% of coverage for the job profile, right? Most of the times, there is not going to be 100% match on any of the job, right? My rule of thumb is just around the same number, like 70 to 75%. You have a profile match, you apply. And I also suggest focus on quality of applications than quantity of application, right? So
Mm-hmm.
if I apply 100 of jobs and don't hear back, I only feel bad, right? Nothing else. So it actually a good segue for next question of mine will be around the resume as you touched upon a little bit, like how do you tailor the resume, right? So there's a lot of kind of myths, confusion also around that area as well. So this will be around optimizing your resume, your LinkedIn profiles, what recruiters look into. So I think this question will be to Kritika. What key attributes do recruiters look in the resume, and what should candidates do, to tailor them for a particular job to stand themselves out among other applicants?
Sure. So I think typically when the hiring team or recruiters are reviewing resumes and maybe even LinkedIn profiles, they're always looking for an alignment of what the candidate brings in, along with the job requirements per se. So the challenge is to make sure that you're not just like listing them, you're not creating another job description. You're highlighting and showcasing your skills and achievements per se to make sure that you're the right fit. So
Mm.
I'm going to break it down. One is touching upon the resume. So when you are I'm sure a lot of people have heard about recruiters typically spend 6 seconds to screen a resume per se. So, one of the key things which I truly believe is the first half of your resume, the first page, the first half of your resume is very important. What
Mm-hmm.
they're asking should reflect there, which will then intrigue them to read further. And then you go ahead and focus on what you bring in, your skills, your achievements, like quantify it as much as you can, using action statements, for example. Another thing, when you're customizing your resume, when you're applying for roles, and that's important, we are not talking about changing the whole picture altogether. It's just tweaking to make sure out of the 10 skills that you have, you're focusing on those 4 or 5 that they are asking for per se. So, highlighting using those relevant keywords, those key achievements that might be relevant there, and removing off those irrelevant information per se. This is again another point of view which I normally mention. Like when you're creating your own resume, look at it from a recruiter's eye, from their perspective. Would you shortlist your own resume if you were a recruiter? If your answer is yes, then you're ready. Your resume is ready for the next step. If not, then maybe you need to do a little more tweaking. Similarly, LinkedIn. Now, going back to LinkedIn, when you're working on your LinkedIn profile again, you don't want to create another resume here. You want to make sure that in your LinkedIn, you're sort of very specifically highlighting those, I would say, your summary as a mini elevator, your headline as a mini elevator pitch, your summary as a elevator pitch, and your experience where you're talking more around uh, what you've done rather than your duties or your responsibilities per se. So, primarily these small things like your resume is what you bring in, and your LinkedIn is like your own story that you bring in. So, if you're able to highlight that in your resume and LinkedIn, I think uh, they're not just going to like your applications are not just going to align with what they're asking for, but then you will get noticed, you will get interviews, you will get the job as well. So, yeah, that's my 2 cents.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. I think the key takeaway there was the first half, or the first sections in the resume should be kind of crisp and aligned to the job, right? So uh, I do sometimes see when during my resume reviews that things are everywhere, kind of start, like they don't have the main theme, uh, or at least what are your top bullet points, right? Keep them high preference to map with the job, right? So those are some of the tips I share as well. So thank you so much. So my next question goes around the common pitfalls. So still gonna stick around resumes and application. That what will be some of these red flags the candidates should avoid, right? Because I think there are some common patterns that we see all the time, and people are still committing those mistakes. So this one goes to Nitin. So common mistakes in resumes and applications that could be a deal breakers, right? So what are some of them?
Oh, gosh, there's so much to say here, but I'm going to focus on what I would consider the top 2 or 3 common pitfalls right now. I think Kritika touched on one that's quite important, which is not adapting the resume to the role. it sounds obvious, but if you don't tailor it to the specific job description you're going to apply for, then it's going to significantly reduce your chances of getting noticed, right? I guess, I guess in the context of data scientists and AI ML engineers, you might know what the domain of the job is, but the reality is every job description is different, right? There's going to be different requirements. There's going to be a different scope as well. There's going to be, depending on the industry, some nuances there as well. So really just take time to understand the job description, align that your resume with that job description, and just make your life easier, make the life of recruiters easier as well. As Kritika said, we take 6 seconds to make a decision on someone because we just have a massive pile of resumes to review. So make those 6 seconds count. Focus on quality. I guess the second point is just not explaining employment gaps or stints, right? It's common that maybe you were laid off or you had a sabbatical or you took time to rest. Try and contextualize that and provide a one sentence of what happened because that will prevent assumptions being made, and because of an assumption it might impact your chances of just at least having the initial recruiting screening call. And then finally, I would say, candidates are using AI in many ways right now, whether it's to support resume building or to prepare for interviews or to do company research. That's absolutely reasonable. But a big deal breaker is just having AI do all the work. So it's writing the resume for you, it's writing the application answers for you, and you as a candidate are not verifying what's being said and written, and it's not necessarily representative of you. So, you know, just be mindful of that because, as Andrew was mentioning, we are sort of moving towards doing AI checks ourselves. We're not only looking for resume and fit, we're looking for is this AI built or does this come across as genuine? So use AI as an assistant, but don't as a co-pilot, but don't use AI as like to
Yeah.
dominate your job search, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Actually, that's a very good point. These days, we see a lot of AI-driven content, and uh, there's always a pros and cons, right? So, always the double-edged sword, I guess, right? So, if someone knows that everything in your resume is built by AI and written by AI, so that's the piece of information that you should put effort and time to write and portray yourself for the job that you are a good fit. So, definitely has to come uh, some of your own way, right? So, like you said, it's a perfect way of saying is use it for assistance, not for everything, right? So, awesome. So, moving on. So, next question I have it for Kim. I think this one is for uh, any suggestions for job search process. There are multiple sites, like there's different strategies people think will work versus not. Where do we find the ideal role based on experience, skills? Obviously there are some dominating sites, but there are other options. Most of the times when I talk to Menti, they're not aware, right? So they are kind of like always uh, thinking that LinkedIn, Indeed, those are obviously main players, but that's not the only option, right? So, and also to stand out, right? Is it based on the domain skills? There is specific uh, techniques, they can apply to find the right fit role. And then when it comes to resume, this is going to be follow up. You can cover at the end. Will be there's a lot of things goes on one pager versus two pager resume, right? So that you can probably do an add on after you cover the first part. Thank you.
Yeah, three big questions.
Yeah.
I think to start, like to your point, I think we're on LinkedIn, a great place to look for jobs.
Hmm.
But I think I would encourage job seekers to go beyond LinkedIn, and I know many do today. Personally, I am a huge advocate for remote work, so
Yes.
I would advocate for remote work sites if you're interested in remote or even hybrid work. Some sites like We Work Remotely, there's Remotive, there's Flex Jobs, there's so many. You could even use ChatGPT to generate a full list for you, and I think those are great places to look for jobs. You can also use different sites based on the type of job you're looking for. So if you're in the tech field, you could use Built-in. Built-in is a really great platform that can not only help you in your job search, but provide you with really great resources to help you in your job search and even in your role that you might be in today. I would also say diversity organizations, and I say this because at Zapier we partner with organizations like Tech Ladies, Power to Fly, Remote Woman, Remote POC, and they're great places because they not only post jobs, but they'll often host events. And so you can attend those events and you can meet with companies that are hiring. You can do networking with others and be introduced to jobs through that. So I would encourage you to check out those too. Your second question was, how do I stand out in the application process? I get this question every day. This is a big question. One that I love to give to people is that if you're looking for a role in tech or even specifically at Zapier, if you can, I say learn about the product. At Zapier, that's something that really stands out to us. So get familiar with how to build a Zap, how to build a chatbot, how to build AI agents. We have tables and interfaces, and there's just so much that you can get your hands on. And so I would encourage anyone to learn about the product in their day to day and then put that on your resume, put that on your application. That can really help you stand out. Beyond Zapier, I would also say, like, talk to people in your field and learn what tools they're using. And if you're not familiar with them, you can take courses and get up to speed on those tools. And again, once you do, add those to your resume or add those to your application. A second, I know we hear about this a lot, but show your impact, show the data. The more data that you have on your resume, the better that's going to illustrate the impact that you've made. It's not just a list of a ton of things you've done, but it's I helped improve by X%. I saved X amount of dollars. Probably hear that a lot, but it really is important. So try to collect the data as you go. Don't wait until you need to have it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would say beyond that, engage with the organization that you're interested in beyond your application. Like follow the company, follow their content. If they're putting newsletters out there, read those newsletters, share your thoughts in the comments, connect with different folks at the company, not just recruiters. If you're interested in sales, connect with the people on the sales team, really get to know them and connect with them. And I think your last question was resume, 1 page, 2 page. Maybe it's an unpopular answer. I don't know. I don't really care. Personally, I do think that there is such a thing as way too long. I have read resumes that are 10, 15 pages, and to me, that is way too long. But I would say, like, if you're looking for general guidance, maybe someone who's earlier in their career, maybe they've only held 1 or 2 jobs, probably 1 page works. But if you've got over 10 years of experience and you've done a lot in your career, maybe 2 pages is more ideal. I would say try to not go over those 2 to 3 pages, but if you do, I would just say to make sure that what you're including is just worth reading.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much. Sorry for packing all three questions at a time, but you kind of pill them one at a time. Thanks so much. The one pager, two pager is always tricky. So the reason I put it there was, uh, like you mentioned, I agree. It could very well be one page, two page based on their experience, what they have to share. Uh, but I have seen resumes with 1.5 or like a lot of blank spaces. I think that is one of the red flag that I think like either it should be one page if you can consolidate, or if you cannot, then just make sure that you have enough content for a two page, right? So, and people going more than two page, I think there are ways that you can build your own portfolio or your link, your something to add link on the resume to redirect the people if they have to do more digging on the projects, right? So you don't have to explain everything there, pretty much the highlights, right? So in my opinion. So all right, so with that, I think we concluded our general recruitment process category, and then we will move into the hot topics today in the tech recruitment process. And then yeah, when we talk about the hot take, like let's bring AI right to the talk. So role of AI and automation in modern recruitment, right? So I'm thinking from job seeker perspective now, right? It's they can also leverage it, like we touched upon a little bit earlier, like Nitin, Kritika, a little bit of it. So can uh, Kritika, can you cover a little bit more on how folks, job seekers or applicants can actually leverage these tools for their best benefit?
Absolutely, Nirmal. I think AI and automation is definitely changing the game for job search for candidates, and I think Nitin covered that quite a bit, where it's important that you use it as an assistant, don't use it as like
Yeah.
closing your eyes and blindly believing it. It's supposed to make your work smarter. Like it's supposed to help you streamline and save time. I think even around like there's one question which I wanted to also like discuss and add it in, where somebody was asking like how to be the first applicant while trying to make sure that my resume is good enough. So that's where AI can play a good place where it can help you. You use the right AI tools to help optimize when you're creating your resume or your cover letter, etc. But it should not be like, okay, you just copy pasted whatever you got from AI and then a lot of time yours and theirs and all of that, like simple things. Just read your resume before you go ahead and like save it and submit and apply to roles. So that's very important, because a lot of times AI is going to give you information that's like super generic. Like, so every information that you're using has to be authentic to you as a person. um, and that's something that's very important, whether you are using AI to apply for jobs or you're doing it for networking. It's very important to have that right balance, and work smarter.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, one point I just want to add will be I also sometimes suggest people that hey, leverage AI to write the bullet points, because sometimes they are like, how do we structure these bullet points, right? So one of the trick they can apply would be have a really good prompt. Work on a prompt first, right? Because I mean, as long as your instruction or prompt is good, and you are telling, give some examples of your writing style, right? They can also like add few bullet points themselves first, and then get an help to write, or like make sure the other bullet points also align. So that is really important to make sure that we're not blindly just putting this stuff, right? And it's just, as you said, one important point is they're more generic. Yeah, like the general purpose languages, right? So all right, so moving on, my next question is covering a little bit different around the diversity inclusion in the hiring process, and especially in the tech roles. uh, in the past I have heard like when they solely rely on uh, machine learning or AI related tools, there could be a lot of bias kind of in the system, so you have to make sure that doesn't happen, and we're talking here like what is the uh, intentional steps to increase diversity in our process of hiring. When the candidate goes through their skills, are they properly picked, so Nitin, for my next question on this.
Yeah, so I would just start by saying that it's still a very important topic, even if it doesn't look like it's that way. Diversity is a conscious thing that companies like Automatic and a few others think about regularly. And some of the best teams, in my opinion, are built on high talent density and high diverse teams,
Mm-hmm.
because it's not just talking about gender diversity. We're talking also about backgrounds, locations, diversity of thought, diversity of perspective, diversity of experiences. There's so much in there, right?
Yeah.
And it's just kind of bringing the best of each other whilst having an environment where people can be themselves authentically, and it's just not people are not treated unfairly or without prejudice. So that's just to contextualize that. But in hiring specifically and in tech, I think Kim mentioned a few job boards out there that promote companies who are open to URGs and represented groups or different communities. My G Work is one of those. Powder Fly is another one. Women Who Code is a community for women in tech. So those are great places to look for if you want to look for a company that has an inclusive kind of or an open DEI practice. In hiring specifically, there's also hiring manager training that's common, where we're training people on unconscious bias and to be aware of things such as affinity bias or in-group bias. It's about ultimately finding the right people. It's not
Mm-hmm.
about where you come from, what do you believe in, or what do you look like. It's just about teaching people to be objective and hire over that rather than gut feel and what I think could be a cultural fit. So that's kind of another example. And kind of on the tactical level, we try and make job descriptions as inclusive as possible. So applying as neutral language as possible, as much neutral language. that's open for anyone. And honestly, for companies who hire remotely are already quite diverse because they're opening the kind of pool to a global audience. So you're going to by default build an international team. If you're hiring in Europe, in the US, and APAC, you're going to have a diverse team. So I think that's my advice. And a lot of companies are doing that right now. So yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, it's a perfect segue for my next topic to Andrew, which is around the remote jobs. You touched upon a little bit, right? So that actually helps bringing diverse talent. So, like, for the candidates, if they are kind of like interested in navigating, Kim covered a little bit about the multiple sources they can look on, at least from the uh, job sites perspective. Uh, let's try to cover from like the other additional things or tips that you have, like, or what have you seen the changes? Basically, after COVID, a lot of things changed, and like a lot of companies are kind of embracing remote culture as well, and there's some talks always coming from some companies saying, hey, is it really productive in nature versus uh, like hybrid? What is your thought process around the overall remote jobs and working in the distributed environment? uh, any suggestion for the folks looking around that area of remote jobs?
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting topic.
Yeah.
Worldly, we're a fully remote company. We have employees in 20 plus countries, so we've done a ton of global hiring. And this is something that we are constantly trying to, solve for or test to really make sure that we're, bringing in the right people. Because when you do remove that in-person element, it does create, different challenges. Or maybe not challenges, but it eliminates the opportunity to really get to know someone face to face in a lot of cases. So I think the important thing as a job seeker to know is and I'm sure Kim and her team can attest to this. A lot of remote only companies are experiencing spikes in applications for obvious reasons. We have a lot of people that are wanting to stay remote, totally understandable, right? And so competition is fierce, and you're really going to have to dial in your resume. This goes back to what I shared earlier about being very targeted in your search. And even though maybe a company looks great or a role is interesting to you, if you're not super aligned to that role or closely aligned, the chances of you hearing back from the team or being able to be invited in for an interview are going to be pretty slim, just knowing the kind of the amount of talent that's out on the market right now. The other thing too, depending on the industry that company is in, for instance, we're in sustainability, so we do have roles where we have to be very industry targeted, and we have to go and find people who have a certain level of domain experience, and so that also can play into the competition factor. And so, I don't have necessarily a takeaway for that other for candidates other than just knowing that the competition is there, and so that alignment is really really key. Also, I think how you show up in virtual interviews is really really key, right? I've had really great candidates on paper, people I was really excited to speak with, and then get into that conversation piece, and that energy isn't there, that value alignment isn't there. The research beforehand and the preparation clearly hasn't been done. And so I hate to say it, but if it doesn't take much to make or break a good interview, right? And so especially in a virtual setting, being able to make sure you set yourself up for success is really key. One thing that we're trying to really do is enable our candidates and provide them with resources beforehand so that they can properly research Worldly and our mission and what we've done and our product and what we do, how we help change the world, right? And give them that opportunity to do that research without having to go and do it themselves. But I do think the candidates that really stand out are those that you know take these extra steps, right, and show up really well in interviews. And then I think just the ability to work asynchronously when you're remote. Like I know it's probably sounds like common sense, but we've seen it happen where there's just people who don't do as well in asynchronous environments. And so if you're going
Mm-hmm.
to succeed on a global team across different time zones, maybe different languages as well, like you have to be able to master the art of working asynchronously with the team. So that's what I would say. There's probably spend a lot more time on it, but those are the big
No,
things.
I think that's a great working asynchronously. That capability I think is need to be built I did struggle in a little bit in the sometime, like understanding or at least getting in the schedule for the meetings, respecting others' time zone when you schedule meetings, things like that. It's has to be the skill to build. Like it kind of sound obvious, like you mentioned, but we definitely have to consider that. The other important, very important thing you mentioned was about at least doing your own little bit of research before the calls. Even today, even the company are hiring for hybrid or on-site roles. Most of the interview still happens, like the virtually, right? So you cannot mess it up, right? So those are few small things that you have to do on your behalf to uh, do a little bit of digging on companies, its value, what it's doing, what's mission, so uh, track your applications, right? So that way you will know. Uh, there were one candidate, one of my mentee one time mentioned that, uh, like it was funny that he joined the call thinking that was the different company interview because he had applied so many interviews until the call started. And I'm like, okay, now, like it kind of like throws him, like off right away. So it's really important you track. Like obviously there's a lot of applications you're applying, but you need to make sure those common things, small things. All right, my next question goes. I think this is a very popular topic, right? People call it fang versus the non-fang. Now that I think the definition of fang also changed, right? So some call it mang. It's a lot of things. Let's not go on acronyms, but it's perfect candidate to ask this question will become as he has worked. I know with fang companies, like companies like Amazon, Uber, big companies, and now like she's doing amazing in Zapier. So let's talk about the candidate's decision making process, what company to join. Sometimes I do talk to people, they are only focused on the FANG companies, right? So, and then when I talk a little bit more, there's no hard priorities or there's no hard reasons why are they doing it. They just want to do it for the branding on the resume. But when you start your initial navigation of career, a lot of things is important just than just the name, right? So I want to hear a little bit more about this, like what type of company to join, uh, how do you kind of like make a wise decision uh, on FANG versus non-FANG, and what are the pros and cons on the site. So, Kim.
Yeah, happy to share. I know, as you mentioned, I've worked in FANG companies before, and
Yes.
now I work for Zapier. That is not, and there's definitely some differences. So I can share a few things from like my experience, and I think some of these I've heard from others before. But in my experience, one I would say is usually FANG companies have a more established company brand. So if you think about companies like Amazon or Google or Meta, you might already have an idea in your mind of what their culture is like, how they operate, how they pay, things like that. So that is one thing that I think is, a difference when you're thinking about FANG versus maybe a smaller organization that you may not be as familiar with, but could still be amazing. I will say for me personally, before I applied to Zapier, I didn't know who Zapier was. I've worked for these big companies, and now I come to Zapier, and it's been a really, really great experience. So and I say that because you might not be familiar with this other organization, but it could actually be a really great fit and a really great experience for you. I also think that some FANG companies, I think about my experience at Amazon, they have like really structured career paths, leveling, really great internal mobility programs. But it could take a lot longer for you to get promoted just due to the size and the scale of the company. I have friends from Amazon that had to work through many transitions and gaining different experiences across different teams before having the chance to be promoted. So I think that's a consideration if you're someone that's like, I want to move quickly from an IC to a manager to a director. That may not happen in a FANG company. It could, but I think for the most part, that probably would not happen. And I hate to say this, but like you could feel like a small cog in a big machine when you're working for a FANG company. Being at Amazon, I sometimes felt like I'm one of thousands of people all trying to do the same thing. And I think that could be a bad thing, but it could also be a good thing because maybe you really want to focus on that just that one thing that you have in front of you and really become an expert there. The difference, I would say, now having worked at Zapier and non-Fang, and I just mentioned this, but the brand may not be as recognizable. I do think we have a pretty great brand at Zapier, but not every company like us has a really great brand. And so you have to do a little bit more digging and you have to do a little bit more research to learn a bit more about that organization. Typically, there is a little bit more flexibility and autonomy as well, from what I have seen. We know that a lot of FANG companies are calling folks back into the office. They have these RTO mandates, and I think some smaller organizations don't always have that. Care a lot about their employees. Not that FANG companies don't, but I think there's a little bit more like intentionality there. So that's something to consider. And while you may not have like as structured mentorship in a smaller organization, I do think the cross-functional collaboration opportunities you have are like really, really strong. For me, like I get to roll up my sleeves, I get involved in a lot of different things at Zapier, and because of that, I have the chance to work with so many different cross-functional stakeholders. So that's fun for me, but it's not fun for everyone. And so I was thinking, like, how do you know which environment is best for you? And I would just say, like, the way to think about that is one, like, do you thrive with clear structure? Do you want to come into an organization where the processes are built, you know exactly what you need to do, and you can come in, plug in, and really be successful from day one? Or are you the kind of person that likes to roll up your sleeves? You like when things are a bit messy, you want to figure things out, you thrive in ambiguity, you want to live in a culture of change. That's me, that's why I love Zapier, but that's not for everyone. And so I think if you can ask yourself that, that's really helpful. And think about or learn about the company's culture just by talking to them. Talk to the employees at that company, especially the smaller organizations that you're not familiar with. Ask for a coffee chat. Ask them, what is your day to day like? What are the challenges you're facing? What is your culture like? How do you operate asynchronously? All these things so that you can determine, is that organization the right fit for you? So I think the only other thing, I just jotted down a couple of notes here, the only other thing to consider is that there are some compensation differences too. So when you think about FANG versus a smaller organization, sometimes FANG companies will pay a little bit more in total compensation. When you think about the equity or stock and the bonuses, you may not always get that at a smaller organization, but I think you have to consider the trade-offs. I still feel like I get paid pretty competitively, but it is different than my experience at Amazon. But for me, the trade-off is I know I get to be fully remote. I work with amazing people. I get to work with automation and AI, and I have a lot of flexibility in my role, and I continue to grow in my skills every single day. So for me, that's worth it. But I think you have to ask yourselves that thing and see what's right for you.
No, that's awesome. Thank you for covering all the different perspective around it. Uh, One key takeaway, the priorities, depends on, uh, it's kind of like personal to each person, right? So, in a way, more subjective. So, yeah, so like compensation, growth, culture, as you see, what other things matter for you for this particular job, then you just have to kind of sort it based on your priority, right? Which one? For some people, maybe the compensation matters, and it's okay, right? For some people, maybe remote work and work-life balance and other things matters, right? So you just have to figure out what kind of meets your goal in a way. I always tell whether you want to be uh, bigger fish in a smaller pond, or small fish in a bigger pond, right? So it just choice matters. Uh, People want to work on a scale, right? Biggest scalability. So that could be, hey, for tech people, I want to do something in a massive scale. Then bigger company might work. All right, so we covered our uh, second section of, like, talking the new tech and AI stuff, and, around the recruitment process. Now my final section will be around sharing some practical tips, giving back to job seekers as we conclude our conversation. Uh, I have a few questions prepared for each of you, and then maybe if there's something left, we can cover at the end. But this will be probably the final tips and what job seekers should focus on, right? So I'll start with Andrew. The value of project portfolios, right? Especially on the tech roles, I think it matters. And showcasing your work, like as they say, you have to kind of like resume as a lot of text, and we already highlighted earlier that there's very fraction of time, little time for review everything. So what are some ways that you can showcase your work, right? what is the value of project portfolios and stuff.
Yeah, I think for obviously it's more prominent for certain roles than others.
Yeah.
Engineers, even those that are in design and UX and UI and all of that. How I like to think about this is combining your resume and your portfolio as an asset together, right? And
Hmm.
having them kind of play off each other, kind of the same mindset we have with our LinkedIn profiles as well. But what I mean by that is sometimes we'll come across candidates that have a really strong portfolio, but their resume is really lacking. It's not very clear as far as what technologies they've built with, what they work with, where their expertise lies, and so we're left to have to make a lot of assumptions, which is not something that's preferable, right? If you're obviously wanting to have a recruiter reach out to you quickly, and so I really recommend leaning into very clear language and a description of what you specialize in on your resume. So on that text based, being very clear. Are you an Angular specialist? Do you work with React on the front end? Like, just be very clear about where you specialize and what you have experience with, and then use your portfolio to really showcase that and maybe story tell a bit more, right? And explain and unpack that a bit more. I think that's the one thing. My biggest takeaway, as I've hired a bunch of engineers over the past couple years, is there tends to be kind of a imbalance there where there's a strong portfolio, not a lot of emphasis put in the resume, or on the other end, a really strong resume that has a lot of great things, but we can't find any kind of examples to showcase that work. So I think really striking a balance there is going to be really key. And I think if you can do that, and a recruiter can use the portfolio to validate what's on the resume, that's going to be the best case scenario for you.
Yeah, that's awesome. Very well covered. Actually, the balance is important, right? I do see people put, if they put too much time on portfolio, and they could speak a lot about projects, but if those projects are not well mentioned or covered, in the resume, then uh, this is hard to figure out, right? Which one you want to highlight more, right? The portfolio is always good to have, but it's not the first hand document that you're sharing. Like, nobody shares the portfolio directly on the application side. You share the resume, right, to begin with. So very important. Thanks for covering that. And next question will be to Nitin, to about like maybe like LinkedIn, right? So we use extensively, and I think I love it. How can we leverage it for networking, mentoring, a lot of things, right? So building a LinkedIn profile that will stand out to recruiters, like, how often, I mean, this is something I don't even know, how often recruiters go to check in the LinkedIn, and if there is a good match or something, like they will send out like, hey, you want to apply for this role, is a good fit, right? So the application can, I mean, massively, it's one way going from job seekers to recruiters, but are there instances that recruiters also look for the right candidates when they find some?
Yeah, I think so because I mean LinkedIn is just by default the biggest professional network, right? So if used correctly, I think LinkedIn can be very effective. But I would also say that we shouldn't just over-index on LinkedIn. We should use things outside of LinkedIn as part of your arsenal. So again, just alluding to what Andrew was saying, if you're a designer, build a great portfolio. Make sure that your work is very clear. If you're an engineer, make sure that you've got a GitHub profile that's public, shows contributions. If you can do open source, even better. Um, and for non-tech professionals, again, going back to LinkedIn, write articles, whether it's technical articles or things that you're interested about, showcase yourself as a subject matter expert. And I guess to recruiters, it signals passion. You come across as an interesting and interested person. Good companies who are looking for the best talent will look at that and value that. It's also great for personal brand. So, I think there's just some great examples of people who do it really well. But yeah, just write something often as possible. Sometimes it could be a poll. Sometimes it could be, hey, what do you think about this topic that's on my mind? Or if you've got your own blog, write about your own blog. I just recently started writing a bit more myself. It's time I'm taking intentionally. It's still sort of work related, but it's important because it's part of your personal brand. So I just encourage anyone to do it, and I do think it helps, 100%.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, so a very good point you mentioned is like people sometimes shy away from sharing things, right? If you have a topic in mind, something that you worked on, and definitely outside of NDA within the company criteria that you can share something. It doesn't really have to be work related. Sometimes your own self-learning, continuous learning things that you have learned. Uh, when I started sharing in LinkedIn, I just started sharing because I wanted to be more disciplined and accountable, right? If I say that, hey, I'm going to start series on talking data science topics for a week, then I committed to that, right? So, uh, and I think that only helps me to go learn, understand it better because I want to kind of explain it uh, well to my audience. And what I got from that was like I learned, like multiple perspective, right? Like I think sometimes they say sharing and is the best way to learn, right? Because when you share, you kind of have to do enough groundwork to understand the topic better. All right, so now going back to one more thing that I want to cover is this will be for Kritika. People put a lot of efforts on technical preparation, and most of the times, very less to no focus on behavioral aspect of the interviews. And I've seen, it sometimes it may not work well on their favor because now the companies are looking for the right mix of both, right? So you have to work on your soft skills as much as you work on your hard skills, right? So what is your key takeaway there? What are some of the tips to help the candidates on the behavioral aspect more than technical?
Yeah, no, I think when it's technical, it's pretty much what you do when you're able to showcase your technical skills through. I think a lot of folks are using different coding apps per se,
Mm-hmm.
like be it CoderPad or be it HackerRank or whatsoever. But when it comes to behavioral interviews, I think one of the key things that I strongly believe, I've actually created a whole series of videos on that,
Mm-hmm.
is always what's worked for me is having my interviews, behavioral interviews, which is more conversational. If you're having a conversation, you're most likely getting that job. So when you're doing those and you're even answering questions there, I think one of the key things which whether you are focusing or they're asking in that aspect is star method. So they may not ask you a star method question, but eventually your response is going to be that, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
when you're sharing your examples, you're sharing the situation, the task that you were doing, what was the action that you took, and what was the result, what was the impact per se. So at the end of the day, your response is going to automatically fall into that box. And when you're doing that, again, being able to like share your achievements, your accomplishments is very crucial. Being able to also share some delivery points
Mm-hmm.
per se, so there are some punch key points that you could always add to intrigue. Like this is again, I mentioned it in my video, but when I'm giving an interview, I talk about not submitting resumes. I'm talking about delivering to roles.
Mm-hmm.
It's just different perspective, right? So it doesn't look like this person is just like, okay, more specific to just sending out resumes. This person is talking about like seeing the whole thing through. So that's very crucial when you're doing your behavioral interviews, because they are going to be looking at so many other aspects and being authentic to yourself. You can use, again, you go back to your AI tools to help you frame things, or you have four pointers that you want to add and help it give you a better response, because maybe you have loss of words which you're not able to like exactly hit it per se. So if you're able to like frame things perfectly, preparation is key.
Mm-hmm.
Own your story, be confident, like have a structure, prepare, and confidence. If you're able to do all of that with your authenticity and your uniqueness, it will definitely go a long way.
Yeah, awesome. Very well covered. I think the key point we touched upon before, like candidate going over to research a little bit about companies, values, stuff that also can somehow you can connect the dots, right? If you talk about the project you did and it kind of aligns with one of the company value, for example, then when you answer using your star approach or any other approach, try to kind of like make that connection, right? To highlight, so it kind of it's all about storytelling at the end of the day, and that's what I feel, right? So all right, so moving on, I have one more question on this section for Kim. It's about something really close to my heart. It's mentorship, like, and how do you find a good mentors, right? So how it helps in your networking. Uh, People relying only on cold applications, it's hard in competitive job market. You have to build connections wherever applicable. You may be able to do it in organic way to ask for referrals, right? So not only sending out first message, hey, I want a job, right? So I mean that doesn't work the way it should. So you just have to find a natural way of finding the right mentors, building good networking, right? So I know, Kim, you also are active in LinkedIn, and you have kind of also vouch and advocate for mentorship, right? So this is a pretty good topic for you. So how do you think about leveraging mentorship and networking, right, during the job search?
Yeah, important question. I know we're over time, so I'm going to keep this really quick.
Yeah.
I'm happy to share more outside of the session too. I would say one, when you reach out to someone, personalize it. I will sometimes get messages that are just like very quick with a short question. And I think when you can, like take the time, review that person's profile, get to know them a little bit more and personalize that. And I think you'll have a greater chance of someone responding to you knowing that you took a few extra minutes to review their profile and get to know them a little bit. Second is, I would say, just be really clear about what you're looking for. I will often have folks reach out to me and they might ask like very broad questions. And I think the more specific you can be, the better. That can also help me know if I'm the right person to answer that question for you. So if you could reach out to say, I looked at your background and I'm interested in understanding this, this, and this, then I know if I'm the right person. And if I also don't have time to get on a call immediately, maybe I could respond back to you via LinkedIn or through an email and answer your questions that way. So just be like very intentional and very thoughtful. What to not do, I think I kind of mentioned this, but like provide more context, be very
Mm-hmm.
intentional with your messaging. I often get messages from folks asking, hey, can you refer me to this job? And sometimes I think, well, I don't know you. Sure, I would be happy to refer you to this job, but I don't know enough about you. So when I say be intentional, share a little bit more about who you are, your background, your skills, why you would want to be referred to the job, why you're a great fit for the job, and just try to share a little bit more. And the last thing that I would say is don't wait until you need a job to start
Mm-hmm.
networking. I love connecting with people. This is how we all came together, was
Yes.
really just connecting, getting to know each other, connecting with others across LinkedIn. I know some of us have made connections to other people in our own networks. So don't
Mm-hmm.
wait until you need a job. I think if you're wanting to build those connections, just do it. Make it something. Make it like a regular habit, something that you do on a regular basis. And I think that can be really powerful for you.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much, everyone. We are a little bit over time, but and sorry about the technical glitch in the beginning. I saw the messages that people were able to use the other link and listen us. So thank you again for your time. I really appreciate everyone joining me today. Obviously, without you guys, so would not have been what I wanted to be. And I'm hoping my audience and everyone, like found it extremely useful. I find it useful because there was a lot of topics that even some of it was kind of new to me. So thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
yeah.
Bye.
No worries.
Thank you
Take
very
care.
much.
Bye bye.